Welcome back to Big LEZ'S League in all rugby league experience. I am your host, Big Les. We're going to be going through all of the trials this weekend. Week 2 of the trials. I thought I would do a preview since there are a lot of starting players that are probably going to play in round 1 in these teams. So I thought I'd do a preview for you guys of this week of the trials. Here it is. So here is the first game of the trials, week 2 of the trials. Here we've got the Knights and we've got the Parramatta Eels. Now, both of them look to be pretty much full first grade sides, bar a few players. But look, in terms of Parramatta here, look at this backline. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see this backline as the starting backline to start the year in 2023. So let's have a look at these teams. We'll start off with the Knights. Now at fullback, Lockie Miller is named. I love this one. We get to see Lockie Miller have a crack in first grade. First full year of first grade as well, mind you, in this trial. First look at him in the Knights colours, and very excited to see how he goes in this side, paired with Kalen Ponga at 5'8" as well. We get a first look at KP at 5'8". See, I guess, first impressions of how he will go there, but Lockie Miller's at fullback. Greg Marzu and Dominic Young are on the wings. Dane Gagai, Bradman Best in the centres. KP and Jackson Hastings in the halves. Daniel Saifidi and Jacob Saifidi in the front row there. Jaden Brayley at 9. Tyson Frizzell and Lockie Fitzgibbon there in the back row. Kurtman at lock. And then we have Phoenix Crossland, Leo Thompson, Adam Elliott and Jack Johns. Tyson Gamble, Heimel Hunt, Christian Mapapalangi, Bailey Hodgson, Brody Jones, Dylan Lucas, Adam Clune, Thomas Cant, and Oren Keeley there on the extended bench for the Newcastle Knights. Now, as I said, we do get that first impression of Kalen Ponga in the 5'8" jersey, which I'm really excited about. Jackson Hastings paired with Kalen Ponga as well. I feel like that's going to be pretty dangerous in this game. Paired also with Lachlan Miller. So very excited to see how they all go there in the spine. Greg Marzu as well. We get to see him in Knights colours for the first time as well. I would say this is pretty much a full first grade starting side. Jack Johns on the in the number 17. On the proper bench here. Realistically, I think this is what it's going to look like going into round 1 for the Newcastle Knights, as I said before. But Kurt Mann at 13, I loved it. I loved it when it first happened, but I just think he's too injury prone to play at 13. I think that he'd be much better as a 14 coming on and playing maybe more of a roaming role rather than a battering ram. I feel like if they used him as more of a roamer rather than that battering ram there in the 13 jersey, I think he'd go a lot better. I actually think that he would go much better at 14. I would have rathered Adam Elliott there in the 13 jersey as that link man, but Kurt Mann, I know he will do a pretty good job in that 13 jersey regardless. I just don't want to see him get injured again this year, but look, they have got the cover in Adam Elliott, obviously, but the last thing I want is to see a Kurt Mann or even a Kalen Ponga injured again this season. Now, I'm a bit more concerned with KP in the front line. Obviously, I don't want him to get injured again. I don't think anyone really wants him to get injured again, KP. So definitely one to watch there. Hopefully he goes all right in the 5'8" jersey. The only reason I like this is because he's so good down the left-hand side, Kalen Ponga. I mean, we've seen it in Origin. We've seen how good he is down that left-hand side. So I think that he'll go all right in this game. It really depends how this combination works and what type of 5'8" he actually is, whether he is a roaming 5'8", or whether they just keep him on that left edge. He's definitely a really good roamer, and that's obviously why I believe he's better at fullback than he is at 6. But keen to see how it goes. Always going into these sort of games with an open mind and seeing how Kalen Ponga at 6 will go. Bradman Best, it really has to be his year this year for me. He was one of the more dominant centers in 2019-2020 before he got injured. I think that if he gets back to that form, it's going to be an absolutely lethal right-hand side with Bradman Best and Dominic Young. If it wasn't already, Dane Gagai and Greg Marzu as well, a pretty strong backline there. Miller, Marzu, Gagai, Best and Young, pretty strong there in the backline. In terms of the forwards, I would say quite strong as well. Leo Thompson off the bench is an absolute freak. He comes back, obviously, from being in the All-Stars game and gets a crack in this side off the bench. I'm very, very keen to see how he goes. Lachlan Fitzgibbon in the back row. I would be inclined to maybe give Jack Johns a start. Lachlan Fitzgibbon, he's a big body as well. He could play in the middle, and he's got a bit of a motor about him as well. So I wouldn't mind maybe Lachlan Fitzgibbon and Jack Johns swapping places maybe to start in round one. But Fitzgibbon is just a goer, and you know what you're going to get out of him each week. So I'm not too fussed about that one. Tyson Gamble on the bench as well. You suggest that he'd probably come off the bench and either play fullback or at 5'8". But very excited to see where Tyson Gamble actually is involved in this game, whether it is at fullback because obviously he has been training there during the preseason, or if it is at 5'8" to replace KP. I want to see if KP also gets a crack at fullback at some stage in this game as well. Bailey Hodgson, you'd suggest, would probably play fullback or maybe even on a wing in this game. Adam Clune as well. I would love to see how he goes. He obviously went quite well for the Knights, even though they did lose. I thought he did go quite well for them in this game. Brady Jones, a bit of a goer as well. Christian Mapapalangi, I'm very excited to see. They've got a pretty good side, the Newcastle Knights. Hopefully they can get the win this week against the Parramatta Eels. But I think the Eels, they just have a really strong side here. I just think will be too much, obviously, for this Newcastle Knights outfield. We'll go through this Parramatta Eels side now. Gutho at fullback, Loom and Sean Russell there on the wings. Will Penasini and Zach Sini. What about that centre pairing? What about those rhyming names there in the centres? Dill Brown, Mitch Moses in the halves, Regan Campbell-Gillard, Junior Paulo in the front row, Josh Hodgson at 9, Sean Lane and Matt Dory there in the back row, and then Jermaine Hopgood at lock. Really keen to see how Jermaine Hopgood goes at lock. I'm also quite keen to see if maybe Hopgood slots into the back row and we do see maybe a Ryan Madison coming off the bench and playing in the 13 jersey. Be interesting to see what the plan is with Ryan Madison since Jermaine Hopgood's now at the club. I thought he went quite well in the All-Stars game. Not the best we've seen from him, in my opinion, but very excited to see how he goes in this Parramatta Eels outfit. Moses as well. God, there's a lot of controversy around him at the moment, what he's going to do moving past 2024. But let's worry about this year with Mitchell Moses, and I think that he is going to be really good next to a guy like Zach Sini. I'm really excited to see that combination. Zach Sini and Sean Russell, I think, is going to be pretty deadly for however long they are on the field together. Will Penasini and Isaac Loom as well. Pretty keen to see how this one goes. I think Mike Acevo is still injured. I'm not too sure. But Loom gets a crack. Maybe they are just resting Mike Acevo for a little while before the season gets underway. I'd be very, very surprised if he wasn't a part of the plans for the starting lineup for the Parramatta Eels going into this year. Very, very surprised. But Loom, he looked all right last week. I'm keen to see how he goes with a pretty much full strength side here for Parramatta. Regan Campbell-Gillard, Junior Paulo, obviously the starting front rowers here. It just gives them a bit of an edge over the Newcastle Knights, in my opinion. Hodgson, I'm very keen to see how he goes. I think he did play last week, but I'm keen to see how he goes this week with the full side. Sean Lane, Matt Dory, keen to see how they go. Jermaine Hopgood as well, as we said before, very keen to see how he goes in the 13. But Sean Lane especially, full side, keen to see how he is coming into this season. But it is pretty much a full-strength side for both teams going into this game, which will be very exciting to sort of get a little bit of a taste going into this year. What these sides are going to look like. And then the extended bench, the bench for this side is Jake Arthur, Jack Murchie, Makaheshi Makatoa, and Winamu Greg. And then obviously the extended bench here, Jordan Rankin, who played last week. Player coach as well for the lower grades. He comes into this side. I'm pretty sure he's on the wrong side of 30. Could be wrong, maybe 28, 29. But I'm pretty sure he is in his 30s. Okafigi Ogden, Jira Momasea, sorry, Jesus, had a bit of a something in my throat there. But Jira Momasea coming into this side as well. Very keen to see how he goes. Kai Rodwell, Tony Matalea, Tony Matali, bloody hell with these names. Matthew Komalafe, Jaden Yates, Ryan Madison, and Luke Morietti. I'm very keen to see how Ryan Madison is injected into this side. As I said before, Wiramu Greg, he usually goes quite well for the Parramatta Eels when he is injected into this side. Keen to see how he goes in this game as well. Massive, massive forward there with a lot of upside. Very keen to see how the Eels go here with this full-strength team. I reckon Zach Sini could realistically earn himself a starting spot here at right centre. Will Penasini on the left. I reckon that's how it's probably going to look going into this year. Sean Russell as well. Massive raps on him, and I reckon that he will probably start as well on the other wing with Marcus Sevo, obviously, on the left side. I don't think Loom will start. I think they will bring Micah Sevo back. But Sean Russell, Zach Sini, Will Penasini, I'm pretty sure that is going to be pretty much copy and paste into round one for the Parramatta Eels. In terms of how this game's going to go, I'm inclined to go with the Parramatta Eels here. I think they're going to get the job done against the Newcastle Knights in this game. A margin of probably 1-12, maybe even 13 plus, but I'm going to make it safe and go 1-12 here. I think the Knights will put in a pretty decent effort with a full strength side. It's going to be a pretty decent game to watch that one. We move on to the next game, which is the Roosters and the Manly Seagulls. For the Sydney Roosters, let's read out this lineup. James Tedesco at fullback, Daniel Tupou and Jackson Paulo on the wings, Joseph Suaalii and Corey Allen there in the centres. Drew Hutchison and Sam Walker are in the halves. Lindsay Collins and Matthew Lodge in the front row. Brandon Smith at 9. Egan Butcher, Nat Butcher in the back row. Victor Radley at lock. The Butcher boys at Grimsby there in the back row. Keen to see how they go. Terrell May, Nafanu White, Jake Turpin and Sua Wong on the bench there. Sua Wong, look, he was all right last week, but I am keen to see how he does go in this game here for the Sydney Roosters. I think he will have a really strong game coming off the bench and playing in the back row. Extended bench here, Thomas Deacon, Junior Palga, Sandon Smith, Ethan King, Tui Pelotu Katoa, Ben Thomas, Tyler Moriarty, Xavier Vaha, L.E.L. Zarkham. I hope that's how you pronounce that one, being very careful with these names. Ben Thomas usually has a good crack when he does come into these sides. Ethan King went well last week. Sandon Smith was sensational. I thought he did a really, really good job in this side. So did Jake Turpin, to be honest. I thought Jake Turpin in the halves looked pretty good in the 5'8 jersey there. If that's how he's going to be interjected into this side, maybe that's almost preparing him to come on in a roaming sort of role, maybe in the forwards. But I'm sort of inclined to go the other direction. I think he'll play hooker going into this year, particularly because I see Brandon Smith maybe moving into that role instead, maybe playing a bit of lock forward. Victor Radley has a spell, and you bring in Jake Turpin to play in that number 9 jersey. Suaalii is in the centres as well. Keen to see how he goes at centre next to Daniel Tupou. I think that's going to be a pretty dangerous left edge there. Corey Allen, Jackson Paulo on the right. Corey Allen in the centres is a scary thought for any team. I don't care what you say. Corey Allen is a very dangerous player. Can't wait to see how he goes here. And James Tedesco back in this side as well. Very keen to see how this team goes on the weekend against the Manly Seagulls. And speaking of Manly, here is their lineup. So KO Weeks is at fullback. Christian Tuipulotu and Ruben Garrick are on the wings. Now, I'm a bit confused about this one, particularly because they were saying Ruben Garrick was going to be playing at centre this year. They signed him on as a centre. Obviously, plans have changed now that Tolotau Kaula is playing in the centres with Brad Parker. Look, I think 2, 3, 4, and 5, again, copy and paste into next year, into round one for me. I think that's exactly how it's going to look. Other than KO Weeks, we may see obviously Tom Travojevic come back, but I'm inclined to think that Ruben Garrick goes to fullback. And we probably see Tom Travojevic play at centre. Kaula maybe slots onto the wing here. Be very interesting to see how it looks. Very interesting to see how it looks. A guy I've got raps on, and I hope he's in the reserves here. Yeah, Raymond Tuimalo Vega. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. But Raymond Tuimalo Vega is a guy I'm watching going into this game. Sorry, I'm absolutely shocking with the names. I do apologize if I'm pronouncing them wrong. It is my fault, obviously, being, a very uncultured swine. But look, I'm trying my very best here with these names, and I do apologize if I get them wrong. If I do get them wrong, I really, really do want you guys to let me know about it. give me the correct pronunciation. So in the next podcast, obviously I can be a bit better. But look, I'm very hopeless with these names. And as I said, I'm very keen to get better with them. But he's definitely a guy I'm watching in this game as well. I honestly think he's a chance of starting on the wing. It's a big call, but I really do think he's a chance of starting on the wing. Where does that leave Cowler? I'm not sure. You could even see Cowler maybe slotting to fullback to start the year as well. I wouldn't mind seeing Cowler at fullback, but I'm inclined to think it will probably be Ruben Garrick, and that probably lets our boy Raymond here slot onto the wing there for the Manly Seagulls. But very interesting to see how it looks. Anyway, Schuster and Cooper Johns are in the halves. Cooper Johns playing halfback last week, even though he had the number 6 on his back. He played very, very well at halfback and probably one of his best games in a while. Keen to see how he partners up with Josh Schuster. Very keen to see how that sort of pairing goes. And Schuster looks very fit going into this season as well. So keen to see how he goes. Taniela Paseka and Jake Travojevic in the front row. I'm hearing that Travojevic will play front row this year. I'm hearing that he will play front row. And obviously, if Schuster doesn't work out, he might go into the 13 jersey there. And then you have Cooper Johns at 6, DCE at 7. Very interested to know why they aren't putting a guy like Daly Cherry Evans into the 7 to start the year. I mean, they've got their starting 7 in Sam Walker in the 7 here in this game. Obviously, they don't have Luke Keary, but Luke Keary's obviously for different reasons. He has those head injury worries. We don't want him to get injured before the season starts. So obviously, he's out for this game, and it is only a trial. So I sort of do get why, Daly Cherry Evans isn't in the side just yet. But as I said, Cooper Johns went really well in the 7 the other week, so keen to see how he goes and keen to see Schuster in the 6. But yeah, Sean Pepe, he is at lock in this game. Hamole Olakawatu and Kelma Tuilagi, they're in the back row. Jake Toby, Ethan Bullymore, Viliami Fafita, and Tofo Sipley on the bench. Fafita went really well last week. He had a really good knock there off the bench. Ethan Bullymore as well. The power in his leg drive is absolutely insane and very fast for a forward as well. I would imagine he would play in the middle off the bench. Could maybe slot onto an edge to start the year, but Kelma Tuilagi for me takes that spot. I think that's why they've signed him to start there on an edge. But Ethan Bullymore off the bench will be very, very dangerous in this Manly side going into this year. And Sipley as well, a very strong, big, large front rower there. Massive guy. I remember I was actually a Roosters and Manly game during last year. And I saw these guys training and I was like, who the fuck is that? Walking around the park there in that Manly jersey. It was Sipley, and he is absolutely huge. You thought he looks big on TV. You think he looks big on TV. He is much bigger in person, an absolute unit there. But anyway, the extended bench. Ben Travojevic, who, by the way, himself has gained a lot of size as well. Ben Travojevic, keen to see how he goes. I think he's in for a big year this year. Ben Condon as well. I think he's going to be massive. Raymond, we talked about Raymond and the year he's going to have. Vega, I think he's going to have a big year and probably end up starting on the wing there for Manly at some stage during the year, maybe even round 1. Josh Alaye returns. Morgan Harper returns, obviously, for playing in the All-Stars game. I thought he was a bit quiet in that game, but look, I think that he's going to have a pretty big one in this game, probably coming on and playing centre. A really good defensive centre as well. I think he's much better at centre than he is on the wing, so I think he's in for a big game off the bench here. Samuela Fainu, always the Fainu brothers put on an absolute show, so I'm keen to see how he goes. And then Zach Fulton there on the extended bench as well. He has a red-hot crack every time he gets on the field. In terms of who's going to win this game, for me, it's got to be the Sydney Roosters. They've got more stars in this side than you can count. Tedesco, Tupou, Suoliti, Jackson Paulo, Corey Allen, Drew Hutchison, Sam Walker, Lindsay Collins, Matthew Lodge, Brandon Smith, Victor Radley, Jake Turpin. I mean, the list goes on and on with all the stars, plus all of the reserve grade stars as well. I think the Roosters do win this one, and probably by 13 plus, considering it is at home for the Roosters. But I do think that the Roosters do win this game here. Going on to the next one, the Dragons v the South Sydney Rabbitohs, Charity Shield. I'm really keen for this one, particularly, again, because they're going to be very similar sides to what we see in round 1. But let's have a look at these sides. So for the Dragons, we have Tyrell Sloan at fullback. I think he's a better winger at the moment than he is a fullback, but what choice do they really have here in terms of who they're putting at fullback other than Moses Mbai? And I don't think they're going to start the year with Moses Mbai at fullback. I think it's going to be Tyrell Sloan. If they're naming him in this game to start at fullback, I think that's pretty much a guarantee that he will play fullback to start the year, but it's rugby league. We never know what's going to happen. So very keen to see what the plan is with him. Matthew Fagai and Michaeli Ravalawa on the wings. Moses Sully and Zach Lomax in the centers. Moses Mbai and Ben Hunt in the halves, which, by the way, I think is what is going to start the year for the Dragons. I think that Jaden Sullivan will find himself in the 14 jersey, coming off the bench, maybe playing in the 9 jersey. And again, with the depth they have this year, I think it's probably where he's going to end up, particularly with a very, very slim depth there, particularly in their spine for me. So I think that Sullivan may end up in that 14 jersey, coming off the bench and playing 9. But look, it was rumored that he was going to play 6, so we'll have to see what happens here. Moses Mbai does start in that jersey. Zane Musgrove, who, by the way, looks absolutely awesome for the Dragons. If there's any good signs coming out of his side, it's Zane Musgrove, who looks really, really good for them. And look, if he is one of those guys in the forwards that has a breakout year, it's going to really help this side move forward going into the season as well. Blake Laurie as well. Really strong forward pack starting. And again, copy and paste for me into round 1. Zane Musgrove and Blake Laurie to start the year. Jacob Little at 9. Again, copy and paste. He will definitely start the year at 9. Ben Murdoch-Masila, who, by the way, looked quite good on an edge. I don't know if he's going to end up on the edge, but he looked quite good there last week. Jaden Sewer on the edge as well. Keen to see how he goes. Billy Burns at lock. Interesting. Very, very interesting, and keen to see how that goes. For me, I would be inclined to pick either Jack DeBellin or Jack Bird gun to head. Jack DeBellin would probably start in the front row for me. I'd have Jack Bird at lock here. But Billy Burns is going to start the year there, obviously resting those guys before round 1. Jaden Sullivan, Francis Molo, Josh Kerr, Aaron Woods on the bench here for the Dragons. And as I said, it's probably going to be, again, copy and paste into round 1. Extended bench, Tyrell Fuimayano, Max Fagai, Tautau Moga, Michael Molo, Dan Russell, Jaden Hunt. Jaden Hunt, by the way, is definitely one to watch, an edge middle forward. Trey Stewart, he looked quite good last week as well. Again, looking at positives for the Dragons, he was quite good last week. Dylan Egan and Savilo Tamale on the bench there for the Dragons. For the South Sydney Rabbitohs, we have Latrell Mitchell at fullback, AJ and Isaac Thompson. Isaac Thompson, copy and paste for me. He has to start on the wing going into this year. An absolute freak out of yardage and in attack in general. He's an absolute weapon. Isaiah Tass, Campbell Graham in the centers. Campbell Graham, Isaac Thompson is going to be so lethal. Same for Isaiah Tass and Alex Johnson here. Absolutely lethal. Very keen to see how they go. Cody Walker and Lockie Ilias are in the halves. Keen to see how that goes. And I think Lockie Ilias, a main criteria for him going into this year, if they want to go well, the South Sydney Rabbitohs, is he needs to get a bit of confidence. He needs to realise that he's one of the guys that's going to be steering the ship here at the South Sydney Rabbitohs. He needs to step into that role. He needs to start being the general. He needs to start getting a voice in this side and get a bit of confidence before round 1 or during the year. Really needs to build up that confidence. Tavita Totola and Tom Burgess are in the front row here. Tavita Totola, very keen to see how he goes. Coming off a really big year last year. Damien Cook at 9. Keon Kolowatangi, Jai Arrow in the back row. Cam Murray at lock. Blake Taff, who copy and paste for me will be the 14. Peter Mamanzelos, Jacob Host, and Shakai Mitchell. Shakai Mitchell, I think, will definitely be on the bench here. For me, Davey Moali and Shakai Mitchell, I would assume would be lock-ins for that bench. A very strong forward pack coming off the bench there. But Mamanzelos obviously takes a spot, probably coming off the bench and playing in the 9 role for Damien Cook. And Blake Taff looking pretty much come off the bench and play anywhere realistically. Puts in 100% effort all of the time. Now, I was talking to one of the Jersey Flegg coaches, and, small world, he is my PE teacher. He said he's basically been told that Tion Tipua, I hope that's how you pronounce it, Tion Tiupa, won't be in his side next year. he'll probably most likely be playing in first grade or be on the extended bench for first grade. So he's definitely one to watch in number 26 here. He had a really, really awesome game last week for South Sydney. Unlucky to lose the game, but a really strong game for Dion. And I think that, look, he's a big chance of battling Blake Taff here for that 14 jersey. Blake Taff pretty much guaranteed in round one, but do not be surprised if you see this guy's name a little bit more often in the extended benches for games, or maybe even in a 14 jersey at some stage during the year, especially Origin. Obviously, Blake Taff will take that fullback role. Look, do not be surprised to see this guy's name again and again and again in the extended benches, or even at 14 during that Origin period as well. An absolute weapon there, and definitely one to watch. Now, the extended bench, Josiah Karapani, Terrell Calocalo, another guy to watch here. Terrell Calocalo. I've heard a lot of good things about him, and he is a really, really awesome player. Great talent coming through. Ben Levette, Davey Moali, again, I think he'll be on the bench here in this side going into this season. Thomas Fletcher, Richard Kenner, heard he's training the house down in this preseason. Michael Cheekham as well. Hopefully he has a big year for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Maybe play some first grade. Jacob Gagai, and obviously Dion Tiupa off the bench there for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I'm taking South here. They've got more strike. They've got more talent. They've got more X factor. They've got more of everything pretty much in this game. The Dragons side isn't looking too good this year, obviously losing some key players. Ben Hunt can dig them out of this hole for sure, but I think in this trial game specifically, the South Sydney Rabbitohs 13+, and that's not me being biased. I just think that it's going to be a big game for South Sydney, particularly because they have such a massive advantage in terms of X factor in this game. So South Sydney 13+ for me in this one in the Charity Shield. Now, a little bit of news here. I may or may not be commentating this game, the Panthers v the Saints, with the True Blue Sporting Podcast now. Obviously, I've been doing the season previews with the True Blue Sporting Podcast, which we'll sort of work our way through them, obviously, before the season gets underway. We'll definitely be all done with those by the time round one kicks off. But we will be commentating this game, the Panthers v the Saints. I'll let you know for sure over the coming days, but we are a possibility to be commentating this game 6:50 p.m. on a Saturday. If you can, it'll either be on Twitch or on TikTok. So make sure you stay tuned for that one. I will let you know, as I said, during the week. But Panthers and Saints. Now, we obviously know the Panthers with Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai, Brian To'o, Taylor May, Isaac Tago, Sione Taruva, the star stack side they've got, plus the forward pack, Fisher Harris, Moses Leota, Mitch Kenny. They're pretty much guaranteed to win this game, the Penrith Panthers, but we will go through these sides nonetheless. We've got Stephen Crichton at fullback, Taylor May and Brian To'o on the wings, Isaac Tago and Sione Taruva in the centres. Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary are in the halves, Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris in the front row with Mitch Kenny at 9. Luke Garner, Zach Hosking in the back row. Isaiah Yeo there at lock. And then we have Jack Cogger, Matthew Eisenhuth, Spencer Leniu, and Jermaine Salmon. Extended bench, quite small here for the Penrith Panthers. Lindsay Smith, Kurt Falls, Liam Henry, Tom Jenkins, and Maverick Geyer. Tom Jenkins, and guy to watch for sure in the back line, an absolute weapon there. And look, as the guru said, he is a chance of making this first grade side either this year or next year. Obviously, with Stephen Crichton going to the Bulldogs, he's definitely a big chance of earning a spot in the centres or on the wing. So definitely one to watch there. Tom Jenkins there, and Maverick Geyer as well had a pretty decent game last weekend. So definitely one to watch there. Look, there's not really much to say for the Penrith Panthers. A pretty much full first grade side here for them. Will Jack Cogger play the 14 or will Sonny Luke play the 14 now? A bit concerned that he's not already in the 14 jersey, Sonny Luke. Don't know if he's injured. Don't know what's going on there outside looking in. But look, I've heard that Jack Cogger is training the house down. So, look, I'll have to see how he goes in this game. In terms of how he'll be used, probably a roaming lock or maybe even a number 9. But he is quite small for a halfback as well, or at least he looks quite small. So I think that he'll most likely be used in a 9 role for Mitch Kenny. But look, very excited for this game and very excited to see how the Panthers go with pretty much a full-strength team. Can take a lot from that game. As for the Saints, we've got Jack Wellesby at fullback, Tom Mackinson, and Jonathan Bennison, I should say, on the wing there for the Saints. Will Hopewadi and Mark Percival there in the centers. Johnny Lomax and Lewis Dodd there in the halves. Alex Wormsley and Matty Lees there in the front row. What an English name, Matty Lees. In the 9, James Roby. Sione Matautia, you definitely recognise that name, if you're a Newcastle Knights supporter. He played for the Knights in the back row only 2 years ago. Curtis Sirenen, another name you'll probably recognise here. And then Morgan Knowles there at lock forward. Joey Lussick, Louis McCarthy, Sharsbrook. Geez, that doesn't get more English than that name. And Ignatius Parsi played for the Warriors only last year, only just moved to the Saints. And then in the extended bench, we have Jake Wingfield, James Bell, Daniel Norman, Ben Davies, Conrad Hurrell, and Thearapple. What a name. Thearapple Ritson there on the bench. Jesus, I'm having an absolute shocker. But look, obviously the Penrith Panthers don't really need to say much more than they are probably going to win this game and probably by 13 plus. Moving on to the next one, the Broncos and the Cowboys. Could you have this game any fucking later than 8:45? 9 o'clock's me bedtime, boys. 9 o'clock's me bedtime. Don't make me go to bed at freaking 11:30, 12 o'clock for the footy. I mean, I'll do it because obviously the footy's worth it, but like, Jesus Christ, could you have a game any fucking later? Anyway, Broncos and Cowboys, definitely a game I'll be tuning into. Look, we get a first taste of Selwyn Cobbo at fullback as well, which is quite exciting. Corey Oates and Jesse Arthurs are on the wings. Tony Staggs, Herbie Farnworth in the centers. Ezra Mam, Jock Madden. Jock Madden obviously comes into the side with Adam Reynolds with back tightness. I'm pretty concerned there. I am pretty concerned going into the start of the year with obviously Adam Reynolds being ruled out with some back tightness there. Really, really concerned. Hopefully it's not covering up for a more severe injury, but he's been dealing with his back tightness for a goddamn while now. And look, I really hope this isn't a continuing theme here for the Broncos because you want to see Adam Reynolds, a guy like Adam Reynolds, who is just an absolute champion in this side as much as possible because he really makes this side look much, much better. But Jock Madden, I'm keen to see him have a crack. Obviously, I think it's his first game in the Broncos jersey. I could be wrong. He could have played last week. But I think it is his first crack here in the number 7 for the Broncos. We've got Corey Jensen and Payne Haas in the front row, Billy Walters at 9. I'm very surprised that they haven't given Tyson Smoothie, a really decent crack. I'm really surprised that he's in the outs list here. I would have loved to have seen him in this extended bench at least. I'm really surprised they didn't give him a massive crack in the last game. Last week, I think he only played like 10 minutes, not even. So, I mean, a guy who I pretty much think is in the conversation, to start the year, maybe even in the 14 for the Brizzy Bronx. I would love to see Tyson Smoothie there in the 14. I think he'd be an awesome 14 for this team. But look, I think realistically it will be Billy Walters and Corey Pakes, two very different players there in the number 9 jerseys. So I think that is how they're going to start the year. But look, don't rule this guy out yet. Do not rule out Tyson Smoothie just yet. I think he could definitely work his way into this team. But yeah, Billy Walters, Corey Pakes, not too surprised that's how they're going to start the year. But I'm more surprised that obviously Tyson Smoothie's been taken out of this side, but giving other guys like Blake Moser here an opportunity at the 9, who I'm very excited for. But Billy Walters is at 9, Payne Haas, Corey Jensen in the front row, Kurt Capewell, Jordan Ricky in the back row here, Paddy Carrigan at 13. Then we got Corey Pakes, Keenan Palacia, Brendan Pecura, and Martin Tapau, which, by the way, I think that's the best we've seen of Martin Tapau last week for the Brizzy Bronx. He just looks so comfortable in that team as well. And I really like that for Martin Tapau. I think he's going to have a pretty big year for this team and be one of the leaders in the forward pack as well. Dean Mariner, Deloise Hoyter, who, again, very excited to see this guy have a crack. Blake Moser, Xavier Willison, and Josh Rogers there on the bench for the Brizzy Bronx. For the Cowboys, Scott Drinkwater is at fullback, Kyle Felt and Murray Tuolagi on the wings, Valentine Holmes and Peter Hiku here in the centres. Tom Dearden and Chad Townsend are in the halves, Jordan McLean and Ruben Cotter in the front row, Reece Robson at 9, Corey Jensen and Jeremiah Nanai in the back row, with Jason Taumalolo there in the 13, Jake Granville, Griffin Neame, Jack Gozaweski and James Taumo there on the bench, Ben Hampton, Riley Price, and Brendan Elliott there on the bench. For this North Queensland Cowboys side. Getting a bit of a runny nose because the fan is giving me a bit of a cold, so bear with me. But Ruben Cotter, very excited to see how he goes in this game. I think he's going to have an absolute blinder in this trial. Really rip and tear there. And keen to see him have another big year, maybe make Origin again as well. I think he definitely will. Reece Robson as well, one of the best feeds out of dummy half in the game for me. I think that he is one of the best just behind Reid Marnie, who we'll get to obviously in this game in a few teams' time. Sorry about that, Jesus Christ. But Reece Robson, a guy I'm very keen to see. There's a few guys I'm keen to see. Obviously, it's pretty much the full-strength side here for the Cowboys, so not much to talk about there. I'm very keen to see if they're still as dominant as they were at the back end of last year as well. I'd love to see a really dominant Cowboys side, and a really dominant Cowboys side, I reckon, could go very close to winning the comp as well. So keen to see how they come into this game against the Broncos. In terms of who's going to win, for me, full-strength Cowboy side takes the win, but I reckon only by 1-12 because it's pretty much full strength here for the Brizzy Bronx as well, other than obviously Adam Reynolds. So I think it'll be a tight one, late at night as well. Brisbane Broncos home realistically. I'm going to go for the North Queensland Cowboys though, but only 1-12. As I said, very close game considering it's pretty much both sides having full strength teams. Going out there in this one. The next game is the Warriors v the Melbourne Storm, and we know what happened last time these two teams versed each other. I don't think it will be the same. Look, I mean, the last game I saw Dallin Watene-Zelezniak in, he was extremely dominant. So I'm keen to see how he will go. Obviously, he's just come off injury as well, so I guess I am a little bit worried about that, but I think that he's going to have an absolute blinder in this one. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak in a very dominant side. I reckon he is probably one of the better wingers in the competition, to be quite frank. But let's have a look at this Warriors team. Because as I said, I think it's pretty much copy and paste into what it's going to look like in round one. So Charles Dickel-Klokstad is at fullback. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak and Marcelo Montoya are on the wings. Braden Williami and Adam Pompey are in the centres. Tamari Martin and Sean Johnson are in the halves. Arden Fanua-Blake, Mitch Barnett are in the front row. Mitch Barnett in the front row. Keen to see how that works. Wade Egan at 9. Jackson Ford, Muradini Kore on the edges. Tohu Harris at 13. Dylan Walker, Bunty Olfa, Josh Curran, and Tom Ale on the bench. Ronald Volkman, Luke Metcalf, Freddie Lussick, Tane Tuapiku, I hope that's how you pronounce it. Bally Sorensen, Viliami Vaila, Edward Cozzy, and Dimitri Sifakula are on the bench there for the Warriors. The one I'm really keen to see is obviously Luke Metcalf here. He could definitely take this fullback jersey and push, obviously, Charles Dickel-Klokstad into the centres, probably taking Adam Pompey's spot at right centre with Marcelo Montoya. I think that's where Chance would be most dangerous in that right centre spot with Marcelo. I'm keen for him to have another big game in this one. If he does, if the Warriors look anything like they did last week, if Luke Metcalf comes off the bench and has a massive impact for this side, if Sean Johnson kicks on in this game, look, I mean, the Warriors could definitely beat the Melbourne Storm. And I know it's a big call, but I can definitely see this one happening. I can definitely see the Warriors giving it a red-hot crack and maybe even beating the Melbourne Storm in this game. But look, a very strong Warriors outfit. And as I said, anything like last week, it's going to be a very, very entertaining game. For the Melbourne Storm, Nick Meaney is at fullback. I think that's how it's going to start the year, obviously, because it's been announced that Ryan Papenhuyzen will not be back until round 8. So a long wait to see Ryan Papenhuyzen. So Nick Meaney, I think, takes that fullback jersey. Will Warbrick and Grant Anderson on the wings. Remus Smith and young Tonamapia in the centres. I believe he is still on a training trial. They might have upgraded his contract, but I didn't hear about it. Outside looking in, I believe he's still on a training trial. Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes in the halves. Nelson Asofa Solomona, Christian Walsh in the front row, Harry Grant at 9. Copy and paste into next year. I think they can't afford to have Nelson on an edge. We talked about this with Hayden in the season previews. I think the size of this bench going into this game, and particularly into the season for the Melbourne Storm, is quite small, considering obviously last season when you had a guy like Jesse Bromwich, you sort of evened it out a bit, but they can't afford to have Nelson on the edge for me. They really can't afford it. So Nelson will probably play front row for most of the season. Christian Walsh as well, an absolute unit coming back. I thought he went all right in his first game back. Keep in mind, he's coming back from an ACL, one of the hardest injuries to come back from. So he's not going to be 100%. If I move his camera just a little bit over. Harry Grant at 9 as well. Keen to see how he goes. Don't think he'll be playing 80 minutes to start the year, and I think Bronson Garlick will be that 14. I think he will be the answer there in the number 14 jersey to come on and play a bit of dummy half, because what I saw from him in that trial last week for Melbourne was really, really impressive, and I'm keen to see him again coming off the bench and having an impact in the number 14 jersey. He can also play in the back row as well. So if Harry Grant does end up playing 80 minutes this year, you can keep him in the 14 jersey, or you can keep him on the bench because he can play in the back row as well. Bronson Garlick, that is the beauty of Bronson Garlick. So Bronson Garlick, Josh King, Chris Lewis, and Tui Kamika on the bench. Josh King, I love him at 13. Tom Eisenhuth, I'm keen to see how he goes in that jersey. I think Josh King, for his size as well, was a perfect link man and really did the job last year for the Melbourne Storm. So look, if he's not the 13, I sort of get it. He'll probably play in the front row again. They can't really afford to sort of give away size in positions. But yeah, very keen to see how he goes. Josh King this year had a big year last year. I think he'll have another big one in this year. Chris Lewis, another guy that's on a training trial this year. Tui Kamika as well. Going to be an absolute unit coming into this team. Can't wait to see how he goes. In the reserves list, Jonah Pezzett, a guy I'm very keen to see how he goes in the number 7. New South Wales under-19s halfback, and was one of the best players on the field in that under-19s Origin game. Tyron Wishart had a really big game in the number 6 last week. I assume he'll probably come on and play in the halves again. They might push Cameron Munster to fullback. I can see that happening in this game. Xavier Coates here gets a crack as well on the wing. Probably a good thing that he's sort of there just in case they don't really need to play him or they don't want to risk him getting injured. Joe Chan here. Aaron Penne, Jordan Grant, who played quite well last week as well. Sui Lova Faulogo. I hope that's how you pronounce that one. I heard he had a pretty big game last week as well. So keen to see how he goes in the number 24. Alec McDonald and Dana Ramey are there on the bench for the Melbourne Storm. For me, I'm going to go with the Melbourne Storm, but I can see the Warriors winning this one. I think it's going to be 1-12, but at the low end of 1-12, I think it's going to be very close. Probably only a 4 to 6 point margin for me in this game. Now, I know you look at the Warriors and the Melbourne Storm and you think 2 point margin, 6 point margin. What are you talking about? But look, looking at these sides, looking at the Warriors from last week, I think if they have a very similar game, the Warriors, they can get up in this game. So I'm keen to see how they go in this one. But yeah, a very even game. I'm going to go and take the Melbourne Storm though. The West Tigers v the Canberra Raiders. Dane Laurie, thank fuck he's been named at fullback here. David Nofaluma and Ken Mamalo on the wings. Brett Naden and Tommy Talau. Tommy Talau gained a lot of size too in this preseason. Keen to see how he goes at starting centre. Adam Dewey and Brandon Wakeham in the halves. Now, you're probably wondering where the fuck is Luke Brooks. He's done his calf, so he won't be in this side in the trial. He probably will miss round 1 and 2 as well. I think he won't be back till round 3, so getting used to Brandon Wakeham being in that 7 jersey. Adam Dewey in the 6 as well. Stefano Utsikamanu and David Clemmer in the front row. Jake Simkin at 9. Isaiah Papali'i and Alex Seyfarth. Alex Seyfarth, give credit to this guy. He is just such an absolute goer in this team as well. So keen to see how he goes in this one, starting in the back row. Do not be surprised to see this guy's name on the bench. An absolute goer. Lives and breathes West Tigers. Keen to see how he goes. David Clemmer, I'm keen to see how he goes in the front row as well. If I had $1 for every time I said keen to see how he goes, probably be a millionaire. But look, I guess it's my little catchphrase for you. Alex Twall in the 13. Love to see Alex Twall maybe score a meat pie in this game. We're praying to the footy gods. We're praying to the footy gods that Alex Twall gets over the line for his first NRL try. That would be an absolute
godsend there. Fanua Pole, who, by the way, I was really impressed with last week. Charlie Staines, who I think can have a really strong game here. Do I think they'll play him at fullback again? I reckon he'll probably play on the wing. He probably might even start over Ken Mamalo just quietly, but we'll see how they go. He goes in this game. Sean Bloor and Tui Mahia Simpkins. Tuki Mahia Simpkins. Bloody hell. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Look, as I said, I'm really struggling with these names. And as I said, clarity on pronunciation would be an absolute godsend there. So look, if you notice I am pronouncing these wrongs, which 9 times out of 10, I probably am. Look, just shoot me a DM. I'm not going to be offended. Just say, hey, it's not how you pronounce this name. It's actually pronounced like this. And look, I will not be offended by that at all. In fact, I think I deserve a little bit of criticism here, and I would love a bit of criticism here because I do want to get these names right going into this year. It's one thing that I'm definitely focusing on going into this year, getting these names right. So Simpkins there on the bench as well, and had a really decent game in the All-Stars game for the limited minutes he had. I thought he was quite impressive. Justin Matamua, Asuka Poa, Atasi James, Stafford Toa, Junior Tupo, Brandon Tumath, and Will Smith, which is probably the easiest name out of the bunch there on the extended bench there for the West Tigers. Raiders. For the Raiders, we have Jordan Rapana at fullback. Really unfortunate that Xavier Savage has broken his jaw and won't be back for a long while, probably until around round 6 or 7. Nick Kotrick and Harley Smith-Shields on the wings, Matt Timoko and Sebastian Chris in the centers. Realistically, probably two of the best centers in the game at the moment in terms of form. Now, I know it's a bit of a big call here. Definitely not the best, but definitely one of the best, or two of the best, I should say, centers at the moment in terms of form going off last year. Really strong center pairing there. One of the best center pairings, I reckon, going into this year. So definitely ones to watch there. Matt Timoko, really strong year, especially at the back end of the 2022 season. I think he's in for a big year this season. Jack Whiten and Jamal Fogarty in the halves. Josh Papali'i and Ray Gula in the front row. Danny Levi at 9. Keen to see how he goes in the 9 jersey for Canberra. Hudson Young, Elliot Whitehead in the back row. Joseph Tarpany at lock. And then we have Brad Schneider. Matt Frawley, Corey Harawira-Naira. We have Corey Horsburgh. Thomas Starling, James Schiller, Pasami Solo, who, again, another guy I'm really keen to see here for the Canberra Raiders, just coming over, I think, from the Newcastle Knights. Really keen to see how he goes. Albert Hopewadi, Artem Mariotta, Trey Mooney, another guy who I think can earn a bench spot in this team. Utaloa Asamoah. Hopefully I pronounced that okay. Brad Marcos and Elijah Anderson on the bench there for the Canberra Raiders. In terms of who wins this game, I'm hoping West Tigers. I'm going West Tigers in this one over Canberra, only slightly. Again, another really close game for me, but I think the West Tigers do get the job done, so I'm going West Tigers 1-12 in that one. I feel like Dane Laurie's going to have a big game. Adam Dewey, Brandon Wakeham, keen to see how that halves pairing goes. Giving Brandon Wakeham a bit of a benefit of a doubt from last week. I found he was quite quiet in that game for the West Tigers, but giving him the benefit of the doubt, it is only a trial. I'm not judging him going into this year, but I think that he and Adam Dewey will go quite well, and I'm hoping them to go quite well, particularly because they probably will start the year off together. Stefano Utsakamanu, again, another guy to watch. He came in really strong in that trial, and I'm very keen to see how he goes. Very keen to see how both of these forwards go. So really excited for this one. I think the Tigers do get the up in this one, only by 1-12 though. In terms of the Bulldogs and the Sharks game, I think this is probably going to be one of the tighter games of the preseason trials. Hayes Perham is definitely the highlight for me. I'm going to be definitely watching the number 1 in this game, Hayes Perham. He's going to start the year in the 1 for me, even though Jake Averillo had probably one of the better ends of the year for last year in the number 1 jersey, even though Jake Averillo looks so good at the back end of the season in the 1. Obviously, it's quite obvious now that Hayes Perham's going to start the year there. Jake Averillo at center. I would rather Averillo at fullback, but I haven't really seen Hayes Perham, obviously, in a full first grade side. I've only seen him in the All-Stars game. And from that, I was really, really impressed. So if he has a similar game to that one, I think he's going to go really well at fullback this year. Carrazanato Carr on the wings, Avarillo, Paul Alamotti in the centers, Matt Burton, Kyle Flanagan in the halves. By the way, Kyle Flanagan and Reed Marnie look really, really good together. Kyle Flanagan's in for a big year. I said it before. I said it even before this freaking, before, Reed Marnie had signed. People give too much hate to Kyle Flanagan for the work that he does in this side. I think he's super solid. I think he's super underrated, and I think in a really good side, he's going to go really well this year. Kyle Flanagan, I think all Bulldogs fans are hoping the same. If not expecting the same, I think they're hoping the same from Kyle Flanagan. I'm here to reassure you, I think he's in for a big year. Max King and Tavita Pangai Jr. in the front row, Reed Marnie at 9. He had an absolute blinder last week, by the way, Reed Marnie. Viliami Kikau and Raymond for Taylor Mariner in the back row. Luke Thompson at lock. Josh Reynolds, Ryan Sutton, Andrew Davey, Corey Waddell, Gerald Sexton, Jackson Topine. Jesus Christ, had an absolute shocker there. Butchered that name, even though it's probably one of the easier names in all of these lists. Jackson Topine, Jacob Preston, Braden Burns, Jaden Tanner, Khaled Rajab, Jaden Ockenbaugh, Ryan Gray, Franklin Pele. Franklin Pele had a massive game and was definitely a game breaker last week. I think he'll earn himself a spot on the bench, or maybe even starting towards the midpoint of the year. But I think that he'll definitely be one of those guys that, comes off the bench, plays 10 minutes per half, and goes absolutely ballistic. And I'm keen to see how he does go in this game. Yeah, look, I'm very excited for this one, particularly because Khaled Rajab's name is in this list. I'm keen to see how he's interjected into this game, probably in the halves or maybe even at fullback. I think he definitely deserves a top 30 contract, and I think that this game is really going to be the make or break for him. So a bit of pressure there on Khaled Rajab. Gerald Sexton, a lot of hype around him, and I'm keen to see how he goes in this one. And look, Paul Alamotti as well as another guy that's had a lot of hype around him, and he looked quite good in the first trial as well. He's starting to get much better in first grade, so keen to see how he goes. And then for the Cronulla Sharks, we've got Will Kennedy at fullback, Sione Katoa and Ronaldo Mulatalo on the wings, Jesse Ramian and COC Fatalakai in the centers, Matt Moylan, Nico Hines in the halves, Toby Rudolph and Royce Hunt in the back row with Blake Brayley at 9, Britton Nakora and Tage Wilton in the back row, Dal Finucane at lock, Cameron McInnes, Wade Graham, Oregon Kafusi, and Braden Hamanueli on the main bench. And then in the extended bench, Braden Trindle, Jack Williams, Mawine Harodi. I bloody hope that's how you pronounce it. Jesus Christ, butchered that one if I didn't pronounce that one correctly. Jesse Colquan. Jesus Christ. Jaden Beryl, Niwai Peru, I think it's how you pronounce that one. Thomas Hazleton, Kale Iro, and Daniel Atkinson. Atkinson had a pretty strong game from the Melbourne Storm system, an absolute class player there, and really good depth, I guess, for Will Kennedy if he does get injured or suspended again this year. Iro, I was really impressed with in the centers too last week. So two guys that I'm definitely watching here, Iro and Atkinson. In terms of who wins this game, I'm going to be leaning towards the Bulldogs. I think the Bulldogs have a mongrel forward pack and probably one of the better forward packs in the comp going into this year. They've still got... Let me have a look at this side. I'm trying to remember names. They've got Franklin Pele, Luke Thompson, Ryan Sutton, Andrew Davey, Raymond Fatala-Mariner, Viliami Kikau, Tavita Pangai Jr., Max King. A pretty strong forward pack going into this year. One of the better forward packs in the comp, I reckon, for sure, if not one of the best, if not the best going into this year. And look, I think Sharks would be second best, if not first best, in terms of forward packs as well going into this year as well. It's going to be an absolute dogfight of a game. And speaking of dogfight, I'm going with the Bulldogs 1-12 in this one. And then the last game of the trials before the 2023 season kicks off, we've got the Dolphins and the Titans. For the Dolphins, and look, this will be pretty similar to how the side looks going into round one, if not copy and paste. Hamiso Tabiwai for Doe at fullback, Jack Bostock and Robert Jennings on the wings, Tessie New and Brenko Lee in the centers, Anthony Milford and Sean O'Sullivan in the halves, Jesse Bromwich and Mark Nichols in the front row with Jeremy Marshall King at 9, Felice Kafusi and Kenny Bromwich there in the back row with Tom Gilbert at lock, Cody Nikorima, Ray Stone, Jared Wallace and Herman Esiesi there on the bench. Ewan Aiken, Isaiah Katoa, Pawasi Fasulama. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's slow this one down. Farmasili. That's right. Farmasili. How did I butcher that one? How did I butcher Farmasili? Anyway, Farmasili, Colony Lemonlelu, Valence Taware, and Mason Teague there on the bench. We've got AJ Brimson, Khan Pereira as well, who I'm very keen to see again. He had a really good game last week. Fafita as well. Jojo Fafita there on the other wing. Aaron Shop and Philip Sami there in the centers. Kieran Four and Tanner Boyd in the halves. Jermaine Jaloff and Tino Fasulamala in the front row with Sam Verrills at 9. Dave Fafita, Bo for more. Isaac Liu at lock forward. Very surprised Aaron Clark isn't starting at lock. But Jaden Campbell, Aaron Clark, Foda Waker. We've got Joe Stimson, Sam McIntyre, Cliche Haas, Toby Sexton, Thomas Weaver. Thomas Weaver, I am so keen to see, and I reckon could definitely push for a 14 jersey. Tremaine Spry returning, obviously, from a long time out of the league. I think it was 2 years he was out of the league with injury. Keno Keeney, and then obviously Isaac Fasulamala Aoi as well. Tino Fasulamala Aoi's brother there, rounding out the bench there for this last game of the trials. For me, I'm taking the Titans, although the Dolphins could definitely get up in this game. They tied with the Brizzy Bronx last week. They tied with the... No, it wasn't the Brizzy Bronx, was it? They tied last week. So I'm very keen to see how they do go in this game. They've got a pretty strong outfit going into this game. So I'm very keen to see how they go. I reckon they could definitely get up, but I am going Gold Coast Titans. I am going 1-12. There you go. That was the preview for your trials. Make sure, if you're not already, to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Subscribe to Big LEZ'S League if you want some awesome content. Make sure you subscribe to Big LEZ'S League. Also, we are recording the season preview today. We're recording the season preview today, part 3. We're going through the South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Gold Coast Titans, and the Dolphins, the Redcliffe Dolphins, whatever you want to call it. We're going through the Redcliffe Dolphins as well, going into 2023. So very exciting season preview coming your way. It'll be on YouTube as well. So make sure, as I said, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. Congratulations to the Chiefs on winning the Super Bowl as well. Joining the bandwagon here. This was not cheap, but it is comfy, this jersey. Joining the bandwagon, if there is one. Number 15, my boy Mahomes, getting the Super Bowl done and dusted as well. I'm probably the last person that knows a lot about the NFL. I know jack shit, but joining the bandwagon anyway. But make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe also to all the podcasts on all podcasting platforms, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.